Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm just gonna get right on into it. I'm just gonna jump right into this video. The last few days I've been talking about Esther. I've been talking about Esther's courage. I've been talking about her selflessness. I was talking about how God used her just at the right time, in perfect timing, and that she was chosen by God to be the one to help her people, and that she was the one standing in the gap for her people, interceding for her people, in order to save the lives of her people, and that she was willing to even risk her own life. She was willing to put her own life on the line, that even if it costed her own life, but that she had this need, and that it was imperative that she go in and that she really stand up for her people, even if it costed her life. And today I'm going to be in the book of Esther, but I'm going to be talking about Queen Vashti. I'm going to be talking about her strength. I'm going to be talking about her boldness. I'm going to be talking about her ability to stand up for herself. And that's who I'm going to be talking about on today, Queen Vashti. Now, we know that Queen Vashti, as it talks about in the first chapter of Esther, that she was the one that was queen before Esther came on board. And we have two queens, and we have two individuals that have so many similarities, but there's also differences too. We have two people of the same gender. We have two women who served in the same role as queen. They served in the same palace, and they were under the same king. Women who were very beautiful, very attractive on the outside, but they were also very attractive when it came to their spirit. When we talk about Esther, we talk about her courage. We talk about her not being selfish. When we think about Vashti, we think about her ability to just be bold. We think about her power. We think about even her courage. And then also we have two people. We have two women who were willing to just place their own lives on the line to stand up for what they really believed in. Esther said, "If I perish, I perish." And she was referencing going in, talking to the king without following proper protocol. But Esther wasn't just anybody. Esther, she was a queen, and she was chosen, and she was called by God, such as a time that it was. And she was placed in that role. She was placed in that position because God picked her. So she was not just anybody. So it was more of an exception for Esther. So she was able to just go in there because the Bible says that the king really loved her, and that immediately when he saw Esther, that she was favored right in his sight. So he really cared about Esther, and she was favored not only in the king's sight, but she was also favored just in the sight of everyone that she encountered and that she just came into contact with. So everyone just basically welcomed her completely into the palace. And the reason she was favored like that in the sight of men, because she was favored by God. Okay, so Esther, she says, "If I perish, I just perish, but I have to talk to the king, and I have to get something done because I have to save my people." Well, it worked. It was the same way with Queen Vashti, because when Queen Vashti decided that she was going to rise up and tell the king no, that she was not going to accept his request, and that she was not going to do what he wanted her to do, even if it just cost her life for her to stand up for herself. And like Daniel said in the first chapter of Daniel, when he says, "I chose not to defile myself," Queen Vashti chose not to defile herself. In other words, she wasn't just going to put herself out there. She was not going to just expose herself. She was not going to make herself unclean or make herself be foolish or put herself out there to be a fool. So she decided that how she felt about herself and how she saw herself and her belief and her value and and it wasn't so much her being a role as a queen, but she had a queen conscience, and she thought highly of herself because she knew her worth and she knew her value, and she knew what the king was asking her to do, that will stoop way below who she was, her character and her personality, and she knew that she was better than that. Okay, so let's talk about Queen Vashti. She was willing because anyone that told the king, if the king sent out a request, the king was expecting for that request to be granted. So in other words, in those times that when the king was telling anyone to do anything, that they had to do it, and if they refused to do it, then then they will be put to death. So, but Queen Vashti said, you know what? I believe in myself and my value and my morals and my boundaries, and me seeing myself so much better than that and placing myself at a high standard that is so far more greater than what you want me to do, because you want me to stoop down at a very low level, and that is not who I am. You want me to act out of character, you want me to get out of character, and that is not who I am. So she refused, and because she refused, even if it cost her life, instead she was just stripped from her queen duties, and she was removed from the palace. But although she was not in the palace anymore, and she was not in that role as queen, she was still a queen, and she still thought highly of herself. It wasn't that she thought she was better than anybody, or that she thought she was more than anybody, or that she was prideful, but she was a woman who knew who she was, and she was a woman who loved herself, and she cared about herself. So before I get too far ahead of myself, I just want to talk about the first chapter of Esther, when it talks about Queen Vashti, when it talks about how she was chosen as queen, and it was this big banquet that was going on, and it was going on over a course of 7 days. It was like a big old party where everyone around in the surrounding areas was invited to this big banquet at the palace. And the Bible talks about that the couches were made of gold and silver, and that the wine was served in gold cups. And the Bible talks about that Queen Vashti, she was the one who was over the women that was at this big banquet that went on for 7 straight days. So she tended to the women and the other queens that came to the banquet. And I'm sure everyone was dressed for success, and they was dressed in their best. And I'm sure Queen Vashti, I know she was standing up there, and she was looking as good and beautiful as she was. And then you had the king. He was tending to the men. He was serving the men, and scripture tells us that he was serving wine, he was serving liquor, but that he wanted to make sure that the men's cups were full at all times with wine. So the Bible says that it came a time at the last day of the banquet that the king was in good spirits. The Bible says he was in high spirits from all the liquor, from all the wine that he was drinking. So in other words, he was feeling good behind the liquor that he was drinking. So he called for he requested that Queen Vashti come before him in men, and that she come before him, and that she perform, that she show off herself, she show off her beauty, she show off her body before a lot of drunken men. And I don't know about you, but I've been around drunken men. And a lot of times when men get together and when they drink, like when they're with their homeboys, once they get tired of just being around their homeboys and drinking, after a while they get tired of looking at their homeboys, and sooner or later they want some good fine women to come and perform. So and to make it significant in today's time, a lot of times when the homeboys and when the men get together and they party and they get drunk, they said now it's time to go where the fine women is at. It's time to hit the club, it's time to hit the strip club, or it's time to just call some women over here so we can get buck wild and crazy. So in other words, they was ready. They ready for some sexual activity to start going on. They ready to get down and dirty with sex. So that's what these men wanted. Bring the queen out here with her fine self, with her good looking self, and have her come out here and perform. But Queen Vashti said, oh no, I'm not giving in to that, because these men are not in their right state of mind, and it's the liquor talking, because they are full of liquor, they are full of wine, and I'm not even going to allow myself to open up that can of worms. And she knew when she brought herself out there, all she was doing was stirring that pot of lust. Because as soon as she would have went out there and the men would have seen her perform, they would begin to lust after her. And sooner or later they would be ready to lay her down and run through her. But Queen Vashti says that I am so much better than that. I'm so much bigger than that. And I'm not your scapegoat. That I'm not your play toy. I'm not your sex toy. I'm not your plaything. That I am somebody. And even if you think less of me, I think very highly of myself. And I'm not going to give in and stoop down to that level that you want me to stoop down to. So when she said no with power, and she put her foot down. She stood up for herself. She had to look after herself. And she refused to put herself out there like that. She refused to put herself out there bad like that, to go before men who were drunk and men who was probably horny and men just waiting to see a woman as attractive as Queen Vashti just go out there and perform, and soon after just ready to dishonor her and ready to just go in to her. And she knew that was what will take place if she would have given in to the king's request. So she said no. She chose to separate herself instead of choosing to insert herself. Instead, she said, that's not for me. That's not what I am about. That's not the woman I am. That I am a queen and that I am a wife, and I deserve to be respected and I deserve to be honored. I deserve to be adored, not used, not mistreated and disrespected and just seen as a piece of meat. And she knew that she was placing her life on the line by telling the king no. But we thank God that God protected her and that God covered her and that God spared her life. But she was willing to go down for what she stood for and what she believed in. She was willing to go down for her integrity. She was willing to go down for her purity and for her virginity. She was willing to go down for that. She placed her life on the line when she told the king no, but she put her foot down. And she said, you know what? This woman is not the one. That I have bigger and better things to do than to come before you and all of these drunken men and perform. Because I see myself as bigger and better than that. So when she was stripped of her duties and she was removed from the palace, she still walked away as a queen. She still walked away with that maturity. She still walked away with that strength. She still walked away with, I meant what I said and I say what I meant. She still walked away with her integrity. She still walked away with her queen consciousness. She still walked away with her purity and with her virginity. She walked away with a big smile on her face, praising God that she did not give in to these men. That she did not allow these men to dishonor her. She didn't allow these men to take their filthy hands and rub all on her and touch all on her. That she was happy and she was glad and she was thankful that she didn't just place her body on the line for these men who were drunk, who was completely out of themselves and being influenced by the alcohol, just run up through her and just lay her down. And I just want to let you and I know that just shows that it just shows that a lot of times, in most cases, that the power and the ball is usually in the woman's court. Because these men could not do what they intended to do with Queen Vashti because she said no. So they couldn't do what they wanted to her. They wanted her to come out there and throw all of this sexual energy around. They wanted her to come out there and perform sexually for them. But the reason why they didn't get her in that way is because the ball was in her court, the power was in her hands, and she put her foot down and she said, no, I refuse to defile myself. I refuse to put myself out there like that because I'm better than that. I'm bigger than that, and I know who I am. I know the woman that I have become. I'm not just a queen has a role in the palace, but I'm a queen even in my mindset. So she walked away. She walked away and she said, no, if you want me to leave the palace, I will leave the palace. But it's good news to know that I'm walking away with still all that I have, that has been blessed, that has been given to me, that has been poured into me. That wasn't taken from me. That wasn't stripped from me. That wasn't stolen from me. But I leave the palace. Bless your name, God. I leave the palace with all of it still intact. And the reason why she was able to leave the palace and not care, she didn't care. She didn't have 1 second thought when she told the king no. When you say no, no is a very powerful word. It's a 2-letter word, but it holds a lot of power. But when you say no, and you put your foot down, and you mean that thing, you have power. You have power. And when she said no, she meant it, even if it costed her her life. But her life was spared. Glory to God. And the reason why her life was spared, I believe, is because she chose to do what was right. She chose to do what was right by herself, by her own self, and also chose to do what was right by God. That's why her life was spared. And she didn't think twice about it. She was happy and excited when she left that palace because she said no to when the king wanted her to come out there in front of him and his drunken friends, that he was filling their cups up at the banquet, and they started filling that liquor and they started feeling themselves and they got a little heated up. So they said, bring the queen out here. Where is that fine looking Vashti at? Bring her tail on out here. I need her to perform because I'm ready to get it in. I'm feeling this liquor. I'm feeling good. And where is the fine women at? So they requested, the king requested, the queen come out there. She said, I'm not having it. No. So instead of having her killed, because God wouldn't allow it, and that's what obedience will do. Obedience will protect us. Obedience saves us and it spares us. Because God will not withhold any good thing for those that walk upright before him. So when Queen Vashti should have been killed because she told the king no, and she refused his request. Instead, she just was removed from the palace. And she was obedient. She loved herself. And she loved on herself. And she knew she was much bigger and higher. And that she was not going to stoop down to the lowest level and the lowest degree that the king wanted her to stoop down to. I believe also too, I'm just like feeling this. Like this Queen Vashti, she just said she wasn't having it. And she wasn't going to let the king, she didn't care if it was the king or anyone else, but she was not going to let the king control her. That's what it was mainly about. You don't have no say-so in whatever I'm asking you to do, because I'm the king, and if I want you to bring yourself on out here and perform and get all undressed in front of me and these men and get buck wild, then that's what I need you to do. I don't need you asking me any questions. I don't need you telling me no. I just need you to come out here and do whatever I'm asking you to do. But Queen Vashti said, I have a voice, and I'm going to use my voice. So in other words, I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. I'm going to speak against what is wrong, and I'm going to stand up for what is right. And I'm telling you no, that I'm not going to do that, and you don't have no power over me. You don't have no control over me, so therefore it's final. Because when us as women, let me just say this, when us as women, when we allow a man to have full control over us, that is a sign of weakness, because what it does, it strips you of your voice. You become voiceless. It strips you of your life, where he becomes your life, where your life becomes all about him, that your life becomes all about the relationship. So whatever he wants you to do, you won't speak up. You won't speak against it. You won't open up your mouth and stand up for yourself, because he has just that much control over you. So you'll do whatever he's asking you to do. You'll give him whatever he wants you to give him, because your life has been stripped. You live your life in the shadows of him. You live your life that this relationship in himself has become your life. So that's how you live your life. And you have been stripped of your voice. So you have become voiceless. It's a sign of weakness. And the more you allow that man to control you, the weaker and broken down you become, where you get to a place where you can't say nothing. You can't even defend yourself if you wanted to, because you have gotten just that weak, and you have gotten just that broken down. Well, whatever pleases him, and if he's looking for you to do it, then that's what you'll do. I've been there, and I know what I'm talking about, and I want to let the women know, never allow yourself to be taken that far by a man, for him to have that much control and power over you. That the only man that should have that much power and control over you, his name is Jesus. But when it comes to any earthly man, any human being having that much power and control over you, it should not be. And that you and I have to realize and recognize, that's why it's so important to have boundaries and to create balance. See, boundaries will allow you to draw the line. And see, when you have boundaries and you understand boundaries and you are enforcing your boundaries, that when a person is pushing your boundaries or trying to overstep your boundaries, you are going to stand up and you are going to enforce your boundaries and say, oh no. In other words, you're going to be like Queen Vashti when she said no. That's what you're going to do. You're going to say no. Why? Because you're pushing my boundaries. You're overstepping my boundaries. Queen Vashti had boundaries. And see, when we have boundaries, and when someone is, let me say it again, when someone is pushing your boundaries, because you have a line that is drawn, and when someone is overstepping that, that's when you'll say no. You will say no. And you will mean that. You will say no, and you will turn, and you will walk away, and you wouldn't look back. And that's what Queen Vashti did. You can remove me from the palace. I'll leave. But it's great news, and it's awesome, and it's amazing that I'm not walking away knowing that I gave in to your dishonorable request to embarrass myself. That's what the king was asking Queen Vashti to do. To disrespect herself, defile herself. And if she was a woman who had a broken consciousness, because it's a lot of us women that still have that broken consciousness that still needs to be restored. So if she was that woman, not knowing who she was, voice being stripped, her life being stripped, just complete control, just complete power, and having the king have that much control over her, she would have given in to the king. But because she knew who she was, and she had boundaries, placing herself at a higher standard, she put her foot down, and she said no, and she refused to allow the king to control her. She knew that what the king was asking her to do was wrong. She knew that. So that's why she refused to give in to that, and she said no. And when you and I enforce our boundaries, that's what we are saying to people. We are saying no. He wants you to do this. No. If it's against your boundaries, if it lowers your standards, you're going to say no. And the reason you will find yourself saying no is because that's not who you are. That goes completely against who you are. Do not allow yourself to be with someone that is causing you to go against who you know, to go against who you are. You know who you are. When you know who you are, stand on that, and don't allow anyone to cause you to go against who you know you are. See, we can't just have boundaries. We got to enforce them. Even if, I did a video earlier about writing stuff down. Even if you have to get a pen and a piece of paper and a notebook, and you got to start writing this stuff down. Even if you have to study and educate yourself on exactly and getting that understanding of exactly what is boundaries, what are boundaries, and how, what does it mean really to place yourself at that higher standard, and morals and values and all of that. Even if you have to gain the knowledge and the understanding so you can actually get this stuff in you, in your mind, in your body, in your spirit, just so down in your soul. If that's what you need to do, then you do that. If that's what I need to do, then that's what I will do. And then we can have those boundaries, and we can be like Queen Vashti. We can be bold, and we can stand up for ourselves, because a lot of us as women, what I'm learning is, as a woman, if you don't stand up for yourself, you will be taken completely advantage of. Eve was taken completely and thrown for a loop in the garden when Satan came in there and basically told her that God was a liar. He approached the woman first. He didn't go to Adam. He went straight to Eve. Do Do not allow yourself to be weak. Because I'm here to let you know that a man, it's like a man can smell that. People can smell that, and they can sense that from you. A lot of times people can sense things from you, and like a mile away. Weakness and gullible and vulnerable. Someone that can be easily taken advantage of. Someone who can, you can just run it on them, and you can just tell them anything and they'll believe everything that is coming out of your mouth. Like, you can really just get them going, like they believe everything. And women, I just want to encourage you and we got to come out of that. We got to come out of that weakness and being vulnerable and gullible and believing everything somebody's telling us and letting people just control us and run us. We have to be strong. We're overcomers. We got to be strong. We have to be able to rise above that and get a backbone and get some strength. We have to start looking at ourselves like we're somebody. That I am a human being. That I have a mind. I have a heart. I have a spirit. That I am somebody. If you don't start believing that you are somebody, how can you expect somebody else to be able to see that you are somebody? When you're not even standing on the fact or the truth of that you are somebody. It's like, if you don't respect yourself, why would you expect somebody else to respect you? It's the same. It works the same way. You know what I'm saying? Like, if somebody else don't care about your morals, you do. If nobody else cares about your values, you do. If nobody else cares, about your boundaries and your standards, you care, and that's all that matters. And this is what I heard another man say, that the people that God has for me, that God will allow them to gravitate towards me, and I will gravitate towards them. And anybody else that God does not have for me, then I'm okay with that. Because He's the one that sends the good, He sends the best into your life. And the people that God sends into your life, those people will gravitate towards you, and you will gravitate towards them. And the people that you notice, they're not really dealing with you, hanging out with you, talking to you, calling to you, or anything like that. It seems like they're turned their backs on you, like they don't want to have anything to do with you. Then that's when you and I have to say, okay, they're just not for me. They're just not for me. And it's not our place to go chasing up behind people, trying to convince them to like you, or trying to convince them to accept you. That's a waste of time, and it's very frustrating. And I heard a man of God say, you have to get to a place where you simply just don't care. Like, you just don't care. I don't care. Because life is too short. And I don't know how much time I have on this earth for me to try to figure out why you feel the way you feel, or why you don't like me, or why you don't accept me, or trying to change your opinion of me, or anything like that. I'm just going to choose to walk away with my boundaries intact, placing myself at a higher standard. Even if you choose not to accept me, even when you choose to remove me. Vashti was removed from the palace. But being removed from the palace was the least, because this girl walked away with everything else: her personality, her character, her morals, her values, her boundaries, her standards, her beauty inside and out. She still had that all intact. And she did not allow what the king was requesting her to do. She did not allow all of that to go down the drain. But she refused to allow the king to control her and just have her out there on Front Street doing any and everything just to please a whole lot of men's sexual desires. Queen Vashti said, I'm not the woman. I'm not the one. I'm not that woman. And she was more than happy. And she walked away with a big smile on her face, with her head lifted up. And she was so thankful that she did not give in. She was so thankful for the woman that God had made her to be. The woman that God continuing to do his great work in her. And if God has started a great work in you because you have his spirit, continue to let him do that great work in you. And even if that means, even if you have to sacrifice. If you are in a relationship with a man, and even if that means that you have to sacrifice that relationship to hold on to everything that God is doing in your life, do it. Because I would rather have that, because that holds so much power. It's so much valuable. And a lot of times what people are asking you to do is so beneath that. It was so beneath Vashti's beliefs and her morals and her values. So if you say no and he walks away and you don't hear from him, okay, then that just lets you know he's just not the one for you. A real man appreciates a woman with values and morals. A woman who carries herself, she has that classy, that classiness about herself. She's confident. And that's how Queen Vashti was. She was very classy. She was very confident. She knew who she was. She was strong. She was bold. And at all cost, even if it meant her life, she sacrificed her life just to maintain purity. Purity in her mindset, purity in her heart, purity when it came to the words in her mouth. All she said was no. She could have let the king have it, but she knew that just by her saying no, that word and that her standing on that no, that it held so much power. When you say no and you mean it, that's power. That's all she had to say. She didn't have to say any more, and she didn't have to say any less. She said no. When it is against you, it's against who you are, you have a right to say no. You have a right to say no. You have a right to say no. And Queen Vashti, she had that right. And God saved her. God spared her life. God protected her. And she walked away with everything still intact. You're talking about a woman with a queen conscience. A woman knowing who she is. A woman that is confident. A woman with morals. A woman with values. Because if she didn't have all of that, she would have went right on out there. She would have performed. She would have gave them a good old show. And she would have laid herself down and let all of them men run up in her. But she was not a weak woman. And she refused to allow the king to have that control over her. So she told the king, no, you don't control me. I know you're the king and everything. I'm not going to disrespect you. But what you're asking me to do is very disrespectful, and it goes against who I am. So if you have to say no and mean it, because it holds so much weight and it holds so much power. And you walk away with that smile on your face, knowing that you still have your boundaries intact, that you are still at that high standard, that you still have your morals and your values and your purity and your integrity and who you are. All of it is still intact. And it doesn't matter how many times you got to say no, but keep saying no. If you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. So, I just wanted to get on here and talk about Queen Vashti, that she was a real one. She was a real woman, you know. She wasn't just a queen by just holding a role or having a role in the palace. She was the queen when it came to her spiritual aspect. When it came to that which was spiritual, her inner self is what really made her a queen. And she held on, and she did not give in to what the king wanted her to do. And I just wanted to get on here and say that if you, you know, like any of my videos on my channel, you can subscribe to my channel and click that notification bell at any time I upload a video, that you will be notified. In the meantime, please be safe, be careful. Until next time.